What is up, everybody? This is Alex from IHE TV. And a few people have asked for my thoughts on Bugonia, the latest Yorgos Lanthimos project, the Greek freak, who we all love. Well, I love anyway. So his last feature was Kinds of Kindness, which I thought was good, but fell into the issue I feel like a lot of anthology movies do, with some segments of it are better than others. Felt its runtime at points, but this is more what I'm looking for from Yorgos, with this tight, compact story focused on a very small group of characters trapped in a freaky situation with a great hook. I love this idea of these two conspiracy theory obsessed guys, Jesse Plemons and Aidan Delbus, kidnapping the CEO, Emma Stone, with the motivational belief that Emma Stone is actually an alien. So you get a mystery bottle kidnapping movie for some of it, but just that core hook of taking two extremes of a society, put them in a room together. What's the kind of drama that happens? And as you can imagine, not ideally. So this is based off this 2003 film, Save the Green Planet, a remake of sorts. I haven't seen this, so I don't know how much has changed, but I'm going to assume a lot. This did still very much feel like a Yorgos Lanthimos movie, so I don't think it's going to win you over if you're not into his style already in some way. Although in saying that, this probably is his broadest, most accessible, easy to understand film. This isn't like an over-the-top period piece like The Favourite or a maximalist satire like Poor Things was. This is much stripped back, even though it is his biggest budget for one of his films to date. So yeah, an estimated budget of 45 to 55 million, which is pretty high, considering Poor Things was in the realm of 35 million, how much bigger scope and scale that film is. Although I'm not complaining, I always like the focus on a small handful of characters and the drama between them, as long as the performances and writing can hold up. The story is a backbone, and I felt like especially the dynamic between these three characters was compelling from beginning to end. I thought the aspect ratio and this tight, uncomfortable, close framing for a lot of the movie added for a certain amount of discomfort and anxiety that helped the story. Just helped that overall claustrophobic feel. These characters are trapped in their situations, their way of thinking. I like reinforcing that through the visuals, as well as this bee metaphor and this recurring mention of this concept of colony collapse disorder, which maps itself onto the film in a few different interesting ways, as far as what it's going for a through line thematically. But something I find constantly rewarding about Yorgos movies is that dark, twisted sense of humor, reveling in the absurdity of the situation. That is a big part of what makes this film work to me. And that delicate balance of the realness and darkness of the situation. Like, there's not much funny about a kidnapping outside of this over-the-top conspiracy theory relating to aliens and people being undercover aliens. And that's definitely going to be one of the biggest sticking points when it comes to the movie. Like a horror film like Weapons, which also has a fantastic hook that gets the story moving immediately and is a great idea. It eventually needs answers, and how you get those answers and what answers you get and how satisfying you find them will depend on the individual. And I'm not talking spoilers, so I think I will do a little spoiler section at the end here. But the direction the story goes, I found to be a satisfying, unusual, strange payoff, which is what I'm looking for from Yorgos movies usually. I think it did a good job capturing that intense feeling of apathy or disconnect and angst that a film like Eddington earlier this year also touched upon. Now that we're slap bang in the middle of the 2020s, I feel like that's becoming a recurring theme in a lot of art to do with our current situation globally. This cultish behavior around conspiracy theories and extreme ideology, with an emphasis on how the lack of agreement on anything, on news sources, on politics, how that's bubbling to the top and manifesting and how it's making us behave, as well as billionaires, CEOs, this extravagant wealth and power juxtaposed against someone who proudly says, I don't get my news from the news. And there's just something very sticky about that core hook to me. The contrast is so extreme, you just want to see what happens with them clashing. I think that does bring up some pretty big questions as far as what the film is saying by the end of it, who it's endorsing, what it's trying to communicate, outside of the novelty of it being just kind of a good melodrama. Some of the more experimental choices make it stand out too. And I think what kind of gives the film its heart and makes the core dynamic work so well with this mostly three-way exchange with Jesse Plemons, Emma Stone, and Aidan Delbus, who I've mentioned these two as characters, but the Don character is somewhere in the middle and has the least agency, so has the most empathy for the situation that he is stuck right in the middle of. This is his first film, I think, with one of the more experimental aspects with him being a young actor on the autism spectrum, which could be risky if it wasn't handled with care. as to not make it insensitive or indelicate or tacky. But I thought the way they handled this character was tasteful and didn't feel like a parody of himself. The structure of the story is kind of a 4-day countdown to a lunar eclipse, with things slowly ramping up and escalating as the days go by. And as is to be expected with Yorgos films at this point, the title design, the font choices, the poster, the colors, the artistry is some of the best in the game at the moment. I absolutely love when it all feels cohesive and like there's this consistent ongoing art direction that's not just like, oh, that's a really cool poster, I wish the movie was like that, but it's like, no, the movie has this exact vibe and give you some pretty striking imagery. So I'm going to shift into some spoiler stuff now to wrap up this review. So obviously the question is Jesse Plemons insane, or is Emma Stone sincerely an alien? That's what strings you along for most of the movie, making it quite an interesting roller coaster of emotion with where your empathy lies, with most of your immediate sympathies obviously going towards Emma Stone, who is the initial victim, being kidnapped by this seemingly crazy guy covered in antihistamine and seems just like a innocent woman in danger, going as far as to her receiving this intense shock therapy. That's when the bubbly playfulness kind of gets a bit darker, because shaving the head and antihistamine is one thing, but when it gets like violent, that is like a notable escalation in the way the story moves. So then the tragedy of the Don character, seeing this torture happening in front of him and being obviously disturbed by it, and eventually taking his own life. Things build to a confrontation where it turns out, no, Emma Stone, she is an alien. Like, she is 100% confirmed an alien by the movie. It fully leans into that reveal and all of the implications that come with it. So looping back, it does give this Jesse Plemons character his own layer of tragedy where he's only so obsessed with this because his mother was put into a coma by the company that Emma Stone is CEO of. And the story is informing us that he was correct the whole time, that she was actually an alien. So the confusing feelings of, well, that doesn't really justify like torturing people, but what we thought were delusions and we're writing things off as comedy were actually just like this dark truth at the heart of something. But then from the aliens' perspective, they're like, yeah, fuck humanity, you guys are like evil accidents, and we're gonna resolve this by just exterminating humanity in the most kind of peaceful way possible. I thought the visual montage that capped the film off was a beautiful, morbid, truly dark, apathetic way to end the story, where it is kind of putting its hands up saying, look at these two hyper extremes of people from humanity, not literally the alien CEO, but, you know, the CEO archetype. You believe that she's a real human/victim because this type of person does exist. We know what it's channeling. We know there's an endless amount of waste and abuse and manipulation and control associated with these huge mega corporations. And then the Jesse Plemons character on the opposite end of the spectrum, just in completely different universes, with the Don character just being this helpless victim at the end of it. To me, it's basically saying, well, I don't know if we really deserve this. We've had our chance. It's a really dark place for it to end, and I know that won't work for some people as a reveal, but I feel like that gave it its own angle, its own commentary, its own wisdom. I've seen this kind of concept before, but it's so rare that you actually see the delusional kidnapper actually turn out to be correct, and all of the confusing emotions that come along with that. Then with the artfulness of the execution of little editing choices that do get a bit more experimental and weird, like a segment or two in the movie where they were just holding on a cut for a second or two, so there's this truncated, awkward blackness for a second or two that really helps build that uneasy tension and feeling that something's just not right. So I would happily watch this again. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I'm sure there are many things you'll pick up knowing where the story goes in the end. One of my favorites of the year so far. I would give this a strong 4-star for Bugonia. It's a satisfying name to say as well, Bugonia. So what did you think of Bugonia? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you on the next video. Also, let me know if there's anything in particular you want to hear reviewed or talked about. I've got Smashing Machine, Pluribus, and a couple other things on my radar. Maybe that new Predator movie, we'll see. But let me know, and I'll see you on the next vid. Bye!